Thank you. Yeah. No, I think this is super important because it's a question of visibility, but you will hear about this. And I mean, ideally, everyone goes away with their own homepage, or at least some mini content on there, or some idea what they want to put in there. And ideally also, but I mean, I'm saying this jokingly. If you we'll talk about this later, but if you want to register a domain, I can also send you a referral code. Then we both get $5. And I can use those $5 to like finance the next thing, because I also have some Swiss chocolates in my office for all of you. So yeah, I mean, this is how we can do it, right? We can't get money any other way. But I'll try to be fair and upfront about this. And let's also make this interactive. So if you have like questions or comments on stuff like this, then let me know. I actually call this digital emancipation because I believe that this, I mean, creating your own research website is only one part of that. You can go much deeper into the rabbit hole and be a little bit anarchist about it. But we'll get to that, and I'll maybe explain a little bit about why I care about these things. So I'm probably, normally I'm making this joke a lot, but here it's probably appropriate to do so. I'm probably the oldest person in the room. And I remember a time when to get on the internet, you had these dial-up modems that made these funny little sounds, and when you actually had to pay per minute, and I got into lots of debates with my parents, but anyway, so I remember a time when the internet wasn't corporate. That's kind of the thing I want to say. And now the internet is like fully corporate, and that's so annoying. Like, I mean, everyone, I think, in academia also partially chose academia because wearing a suit is optional. If you like wearing a suit, that's cool, but you don't have to, right? And I mean, wearing a suit for me and being forced to do so every day going into your job, that's like super corporate. I don't like that. No one gets to tell me how I should dress, right? I mean, I dress how I want. And this is the same with the website. So before we get into this, I collected some common reservations. By the way, if you have more, then also let me know. Maybe you have some reservations that you want to discuss, but we're gonna go over some of them because that's kind of like, I like to call this neo-scholastic discourse, which is what people in the Middle Ages always did. So someone stood up and went to the podium and said, it's going to be like this. And then someone else said, no, but I say to this, it's not like that, and so on. So we're going to go over those. And I try to steelman a couple of things, although steelmanning is maybe the wrong term here, because I don't really have that strong of an argument, because you can always put it both ways. But anyway, one reservation that I always hear is I don't have anything worthwhile to say. It might be true, but I just want to show you one example of this. So do you think this guy wakes up in the morning and says, no, I don't have anything worthwhile to say? I don't think so. So I mean, this is exactly the problem that I'm illustrating. Bertrand Russell illustrated this and coined it much nicer. So he said the whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so certain of themselves, and wise are people so full of doubts. And we are, of course, wise, right? And the same goes also for being quiet versus being loud. Don't leave social media, or don't leave the internet to corporate randos that think that this is somehow deep. Don't do that. Like, I mean, you all have a voice and you all have something to contribute to the discourse. You don't have to, that's fine, but at least know that I think everyone has something worthwhile to say. And in particular, you probably don't have an algorithm that works for you and that pushes this stuff on other people, right? So you're not even pushing it on anyone else if you have a website. The other thing that I often hear is I don't have enough content. That I think is like mitigated easily, and I actually even don't believe it, but I want to put some Ralph Waldo Emerson there because he's a great poet and so on. Everyone should read him and write more papers, right? So to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. Because I believe that this is a very weird capitalist view of this, where we say, okay, if you have 10 papers, then I'm allowed to do a website, and beyond that, I'm not, or only if I have 10 nature papers, right? I mean, that's rubbish. You have something to tell, and you exist, and obviously you exist, I think, and that is already enough content. You don't have to create the next Google, or you don't have to create the next digital library to make that work. So people often, I think, underestimate how much they already well, can be valued by others, and you add your voice to a very big discussion going on there that can be super, super helpful. Even if you have no not yet 10,000 nature papers. The other thing, and that one hits hard because that I heard, I mean, about the content stuff and so on, that was never a big reservation for me because, as I said, I mean, I'm very old in comparison to you. And when I grew up, I mean, it was a very much like free-spirited internet, and you had like code sharing everywhere, and like you could basically make a lot of friends by just showing a kernel patch, because I mean, of course, I was hacking at Linux, right? And then sometimes you made a mistake with your driver, and then your monitor didn't work, or you didn't get the resolution to work, and then you hacked this a little bit, and you had a patch, and then you send it around, and people were super happy. And that was already like a contribution. You can't do this anymore because, as I said, everything has become so corporate. But anyway, I don't like marketing. That's something that I hear a lot. But there, I think I want to say that this is not necessarily marketing. I think it's being considerate in, by contrast, what you're doing, because you make it easier for people to find you and relate to the, I'm sure, awesome research that you're doing. So marketing is only necessary if you have a crappy product to sell, but you're not the product, you're a person. And if you just write what you like, then people can take it or leave it. And so it's not marketing, it's being considerate. The other thing, I mean, that's of course a little bit trivial to solve, right? I mean, I don't know how, that's why we're here. But I like this article. This appeared in the Jerusalem Post and was just updated. And I really like the way that they phrase this, right? They just say how to design a website for complete idiots. So it has arrived in mainstream journalism as well. And it's not that hard. If it, of course, getting the design and so on, getting that right and whatnot, that is hard. I grant you that. Not everyone can do that, and people that are artistic and designers, they deserve a lot of praise and a lot of money. But the technical parts, like getting this up somewhere and getting people to interact with this is not hard. Trust me on that. Okay, now why? Like, why would you want to do this? These are some common reservations, but maybe I realized in the spirit of being didactic, do you have any reservations that maybe I should answer? But I mean, okay, that's biased, right? Because you're already here. So kind of like the hurdle has already been taken. You're obviously at least 5% interest in that. But if you have any reservations that I missed, maybe I can try to counter them. And probably now someone has someone that I can't counter, and then we're going to have to close and eat. But okay, so far, okay. Doing well, going well, okay. So why? This is now just for academics. I would say that in some sense, a website is your portfolio and you get to create it the way you want. It's also your interface for interacting with academia, which can be relevant because you need to know, people need to know how to find you, how to reach you, how to interact with you. The other thing is maybe more for control freaks like myself. This website or a website that you do is entirely under your control. So if you like, I don't know, kite surfing, you can put a picture of you kite surfing there. And no corporate overlord is going to come and going to say, oh, that doesn't fit well into our branding. Or if you like to wear, I don't know, green shirts, right? No one can come and can say, well, but the Helmholtz colors are actually Helmholtz purple and Helmholtz black and Helmholtz white. So you're not allowed to do this. So it's entirely under your control. You can present yourself in the way that you want. I think this is like super liberating. And I like it. Yeah.
But as a PR, would you like to see some personalized statements about what they do, for example, when they're not working?
Okay, that's a different question.
Would it be fine, and would be happy to see that information like, as a recruiter?
Yeah. So maybe I'm going to repeat this for the online audience. So to what extent is it, do I as a PI or as a potential recruiter want to see personal information on people's websites? I admit that this is a hard one to answer because, I mean, I know that when we hire people, we hire the whole person, right? I mean, they come to us with the idea, with some ideas, with biases, with things they can do well, with things they can't do well, also with hobbies, potentially. I mean, even though, I mean, it's academia, right? So like, got to work. It's a very, very, very non-toxic working culture that we have here in academia, right? But nevertheless, so personally, I like it when I see a little bit about what people are enthusiastic about. I'm hearing some weird noises here, but I think that's the AC, right? Maybe it's gonna explode. That would not be good. But so I think the important thing is that you should feel comfortable with sharing this. So there's no need to overshare. I know tons of people that don't want to share certain facets of their private life, which is perfectly okay. If you have something to share, and if you say like, no, but I like wakeboarding or whatever, then put it on there. I think it can sometimes be nice to put a face to people, or even connect with people in other ways. But I would say that it's not strictly a necessity. So you can even have a personal website that is very, in some sense, professional and only shows one face of your personality to the world. That is perfectly acceptable. Yeah. But yeah, again, to add to this, it's your interface for interacting with academia or with others. So you can decide what you put there. I think many people have a mixture of things now. So the private has sometimes become also the public. So I know that some of my friends are very active, for instance, in getting improvements in trans rights to work. So for instance, name changing policies and things like this. And if this is a cause that you feel about, then I think it's also something you should feel confident about putting on your website. But it's no need. So it's not a criterion for me as a recruiter. I also have to admit, I tend to not go on personal websites of people that I recruit. The personal website comes into place at a different point, which we'll cover, I think, here, namely this one. The more prosaic reason for having a website is, if I cannot find you, I cannot invite you to give talks or to assist me in a project, or to answer my stupid questions about some measure theory, because I suck at measure theory. I'm a topologist, right? I can't do this. So this is actually, you don't believe this, but this is a big issue for conference and workshop organizers. So we try to find people to give keynotes. And of course, I mean, there's like 4 people in your field, and you know that you want to have one of them give the keynote, but then there's 3 other spots, and you're saying like, no, it shouldn't always be the same people there. Or you want to find panelists. So you look for people that are maybe early career researchers working on a specific topic. You want their opinion on that. If I cannot find you, you don't exist, on at least in terms of that. Or rather, let me put it more like, let's open the door and let's find out how science is being made. I mean, everyone at the PI level, I think, and probably also at the PhD level, I mean, everyone is overworked, right? So I don't have 2 hours to find people for a panel, but rather, if I want to find people for a panel, I probably have like maybe 20 minutes, and I'm basically just okay, graph learning, equity, diversity, something like this. If someone is looking for instance, for graphs that represent I don't know, videos, YouTube videos, and try to make sure that the graph represents some kind of equitable outcomes, right? Then I search for these things, and then I maybe go to like page 2 of the Google search results, and that's it. If people don't come up there, then I won't find them. And this, of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit, because in my community, so topology and machine learning, it's actually going well, I would say. We know who is there. We have some kind of memberships. We have some professional associations, but still, it's sometimes hard finding people to kind of promote them a little bit, to kind of give talks about that. And so that, I think, is for me the #1 reason why it pays off to do the website. Now, here's one reservation that I will that I don't have on the slide, but I will try to say this diplomatically. So you might think that your employer is capable of doing this for you, but I can assure you this is not the case. I actually tested myself on my website. We don't get lots of traffic from the Helmholtz website, unfortunately. So the websites that refer to our website, if people are visiting the Helmholtz website and then visiting our website, that's very, very few in numbers. So most of the visitors on my website and on my group's website, they come from Google, or they come from other links. So basically, this is kind of your responsibility. You shouldn't rely on your employer for doing this. This also comes back to the control aspect. Yes, please.
Why would your personal website be easier to find than the Helmholtz one, or Google would recommend it?
No, that's sorry, that's not. Why would the personal website be easier to find than the Helmholtz one? I think that's a matter of the content that is on there. So if you have lots of things associated to your name there, and some pages there that are easy to navigate, then I think people will find that. Then I think this page will already be upranked and not necessarily be upstaged by your employer's website. And by the way, I mean, the good thing about the web is you can have both, right? You can have your cake and eat it as well. So you can link to your employer's website. You can have all these additional profiles and collect them. The only thing I want to say is don't rely on this entirely, because if you move jobs, your employer's website will be deactivated at some point, right? So all the things that you invest into the design or into the content that you put there, it will either be outdated or it will be deactivated at some point, whereas all the stuff that is under your control remains under your control, and you can kind of pitch what you want. Same goes for LinkedIn. So it's nice that LinkedIn exists. I also have a profile there, but I find it super tedious to care for it and to curate it, because it offers me a limited list of skills, and then I'm saying like, okay, can I put kite surfing in there as a skill set or not, right? And I can't actually do this. I don't know where this is coming from. But still, I can't do this because LinkedIn decides what I can put there and what I can't put on there. And if they say at the next time, yeah, we don't want this anymore, then it's just gone and you have no recourse to that. Anyway, other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I think for PhD students, we don't, none of us has any this is an aim and
yeah.
I don't even have a future.
I tried as an exercise today, I tried to find people from Fabian Theis's lab, for instance, by navigating over the Helmholtz website, and I was unable to do so. I mean, okay, truth be told, again, that wasn't like these 2 hours that I invested. It was more like, again, like the 5 minutes or maybe like opening the website, looking for some links. But I think that tells you already that if you, I mean, we are information gatherers, and the longer it takes for us to find information, the more likely we are to give up. So no one's gonna find you if you're buried like 5 link levels deep. But I think that this is kind of the strongest reason, because I have been in that situation many times where I'm like, okay, I know that I know the big shots in the field, I can invite them all the time, but they give like 5,000 talks at every conference. It's kind of boring. You want to have some kind of change there, right? And I can't find the new generation. So the other thing is, then this is what digital emancipation for me is about. So like a little bit like you can put your tinfoil hats on there, because I'm not sure how this is going to resonate with the room, but I'm doing it anyway. So what I really don't like is that, I mean, the web is in some sense, it is controlled by large corporations. So I think the generation of our parents and maybe even like the younger generation, I actually don't want to presume too much. I mean, they hang around like 1 or 2 websites and all day long. And these websites, they are built, or web apps or whatever, they are built so that you spend your time in those, and they're actually built what we hackers would call walled gardens, because it's a nice garden. You stay in Facebook, you have an internal Facebook search engine, or you stay on TikTok, you have an internal TikTok engine. So you never have to get away from this. But this is unfortunate in the sense that then the corporation or the person who controls this thing, they get to decide what you see, what content you're allowed to interact with, and how you interact with this. And I think the recent changes in Twitter policies are a great example of this, where we can see how this can go haywire. I mean, this started out with Elon Musk buying Twitter and saying, okay, we need to make it more democratic and more free speech. And if you hear someone say this, then I, as someone who has heard this times and times again, is like, your alarm bell should be ringing, because I mean, this is a dog whistle for something else, right? And now you have tweets of Elon Musk where he says that if you use cis as like in cisgender, he considers this to be hate speech on his platform. So I'm not making this stuff up. I mean, this stuff happens. I mean, of course, the question is like, will he really go down on people? And is this really the hill to die on? And I'm saying, no. The cool thing is, this is the web. This is not the hill to die on. We just build our own hill, and then people can find you there. As academics, I also want to urge everyone to not be conformist, right? I mean, we're all different, and we all have different goals and things in mind. So why should we conform to this, and why should we live in a bubble that is created by someone else? So I want people to resist this. And then, I mean, this doesn't mean that you're not allowed to visit those websites, right? And this is not one of those types of seminars where I'm saying like, no, it's not a cult, it's just like this, right? No, you can visit those, you can interact with those. I'm also on Twitter, I have no problem with that. It's just like, resist this and be sure to critically think about this, what you're doing there, and who gets to control who interacts with your research, who gets to see your tweets, who gets to see your papers, and so on. All right. More motivation, but I'm not going to read the last panel out loud because this is being recorded, right? So XKCD, actually one of the early XKCD has that. And I'm going to summarize this for you because I mean, reading is a pain, right? So this one guy says, yeah, you should make sure to rein yourself in what you write, because you never know what a future employer might read it. And then the writer is saying like, oh, when did we forget about our dreams? And there's a big diatribe coming on, and it's basically saying like, life is short, life has many precious moments, make the most of it, and so on. And then there is a profanity that I'm not gonna read out loud. So I think that can also be sometimes a little bit motivating and liberating, because you get to talk about this stuff. No one gets to complain about that sort of stuff. So I have, for instance, one of my earliest articles, we're gonna see this later on, and it's a little bit cringy, right? I had some fun developing like kind of a hacker tool in way back when, like early 2000s or something like this, where you could like take over a network from within, and that was super fun. And I was just like, oh yeah, I'm going to share this with the world. Probably not a good idea if you would do this on LinkedIn, or probably a good idea to get banned forever from Twitter or something like this. But me being young and naive at this time, right? I just did it because I was like, oh, this is technically fun and maybe people like it. And so yeah, sometimes I still got this job here, right? So, but probably Fabian didn't see that tool, so maybe otherwise he would have said, no, we can't hire that guy. Anyway, it's by the way, the tool is probably defunct by now. It was written for FreeBSD, great operating system. Can totally recommend that, but yeah, it's really not that much of a detail. Okay, that brings me to the how. But we're not going into the practical details yet. It's more like I want to give you like some vocabulary, because who knows. So I don't know the technical prowess of the audience, and I also don't want to assume, because I think this is not something that is usually covered in computer science or whatever. So there's actually only 3 components that you need, and one of them is optional, and maybe even the second one is optional. So the first thing you need is just some content. Like that's kind of the easy part, because you can just have a website that just says, hello, that's me. And here's a link to my Twitter and LinkedIn profile, perfectly acceptable. Then you need a web host, so some person or some other company that hosts the stuff. And I know, like, don't call me out on that. I said large corporations are controlling that, yada, yada, and now you're using those to host your stuff. Yes, but that's different, because it's still kind of findable and indexable by other things. So you still have some control of what you put up there. And you can have even more control if you want that. The last thing is a domain, but that's optional. So domain is something like, I don't know, Helmholtz Munich DE or something like this. What not a lot of people know, so hope I don't sound too patronizing, but I mean, my family didn't know it. Some of my students also didn't know it. You can buy those. Like, it's like, you don't have to be special for that. You can just buy and register that. And there's actually always a couple of new. So previously, again, like I'm dating myself there a little bit. When I grew up, we only had like top level domains that were for the countries. So you had DE for Germany, you had CH for Switzerland, and so on. But now this has opened up a couple of years back, and people are saying, but we want other top level domains. So I have, for instance, one that is called topology.rocks. That's really cool, right? It's if that's your kind of humor. So bottom line is that there's something for everyone, and like even if you have a very common name, you'll still find like a top level domain that works for you. Yeah.
Maybe if you buy a domain, is it like you need to pay? You buy it once, or you need to pay?
No, yeah, good question. We're going to come back to that later, but you typically rent the domain. So that's a little bit annoying. There's almost no domain services that guarantee you this reservation for life. That has to do with the intricacies of the internet, unfortunately, because there's essentially one organization in the US that kind of distributes all this stuff, because they have to decide who gets to see your content at some point. And they have a network or a sub-network of registrars and sub-registrars and so on and so forth, where you can actually buy your stuff, or rather I should say rent it. So yeah, buying is probably not appropriate. But on the other hand, the cool thing is that the domain is just a little bit like, probably none of you remember that, like a telephone book, telephone directory, like a book where you had like telephone numbers in there. So it's just that, it just points to your content. If you have a registrar that says at some point, I don't like this anymore, I'm going bankrupt now, then the domain will automatically be released and you can host it with someone else. So it's not, your content is never lost, is what I'm saying. The only thing that might change is your telephone number for like a couple of days. Right. Any other questions about this? Sorry, do you want to skip ahead? But we'll cover this a little bit more in detail. The other thing is, how do you create content? There's a couple of ways to do that, depending on how much pain you like or how much stuff you like to learn. So the easiest thing to do is, maybe the most painful thing to do is you actually learn some HTML. HTML is not hard to learn. It's a markup language that was designed to like disentangle content from style. It's a little bit weird though to write. You'll see this in a second. You could also be a little bit more avant-garde and go with the times and learn some Markdown. Markdown is the opposite of a markup language. This is why it's called Markdown. It's supposed to be a very simple way to add stuff to your document. So basically you say something like, oh, this is a header, or this is a link, or whatever. Or you could use a content management system. And this is actually a different class altogether. So sometimes people like to do this in a what you see is what you get manner. So they like to add a text box there, then type some text in and so on. So all of those are equally valid. They have some have some advantages, some have some disadvantages, but all is valid because, I mean, fundamentally it's about the product that you want to have at the end, right? So like it doesn't matter how you get to the finish line as long as you get there. So we'll discuss a couple of those later. For hosting content, there's also more than one way to do that. So the easiest thing that also you capture two birds in one net there, basically. With Google Sites, you get a nice content management system. You don't have to learn anything additional, and you get it already hosted there. Disadvantage is that it's hosted with Google Sites, so you get a lot of stuff with like cookie banners and other warnings and stuff like that. So your visitors already they leave a lot of footprints, digital footprints there, but still it's doable. GitHub is another alternative. Maybe this will be useful for the practical session. Anyone already using GitHub? No, just for like, have you heard of GitHub, right? Like, okay, great. Yeah, no, I'm mentioning this because like you can also do this. This is actually pretty cool because I don't get any reference from this, unfortunately, like no referral fees there, but as a member of Helmholtz Munich or a member of TUM or a member of LMU or a subsection thereof or whatever, you are, and any academic institution, sorry for getting about you are entitled to get a free GitHub Pro account or whatever they call it these days. Super simple process. Just click on this thing where you say pro and then you say buying and then you say educational discount. You type in your address from some accredited institution. Typically, I mean, Helmholtz was also accredited there without me doing anything. So I think it's a pretty quick process, and they actually parse a lot of the institutions of the world. And then you get professional features for free, which I think means that you can have a little bit more actions running in the background and stuff like that. If that's technical gibberish to you, doesn't matter, you can also do this with a free account. I just wanted to point it out because I think this is a great thing that GitHub is doing there, or rather I should say it's Microsoft now doing that, right? Because they acquired that. Again, you can see kind of the same corporations cropping up everywhere, right? But still, doing it on GitHub has certain advantages because you can just move it around as well, but it's good for training. If you want to do that, and if I'm trustworthy to you, you can also use my server. I mean, I have a server running, it runs anyway, so like energy costs and so on. You can get stuff hosted there as well, but you need to know some Linux for that, and it's going to be a little bit more elaborate. Or if you want to be even more elaborate, of course, you can also run your own server. So no one can stop you from this. It costs a little bit more. So the first two options are, well, actually, this one is also free, but giving me coffee every once in a while is always appreciated, right? But the first two are free, as in like completely free. And the other ones, the last one definitely costs something. So, but here you can talk to me. I have lots of lots of ideas where to put this. I don't get referrals there. But yeah, before we go into this, I wanted to show you something concerning like like what this all means actually, like HTML. So no, we're not gonna do a course in this because I mean that's I think a waste of your time a little bit. But I wanted to tell you that this is actually more or less all that is required to have like a simple website. So you have some meta information there to make it nicer to index for your for a search engine, even though technically the meta information is not necessary. So don't, if you already know how to do your websites, what are you doing here, right? But don't criticize me too much. Then you have some kind of tags, as they call that, right? And you basically specify what you want to have, and you can see that this kind of disentangles your content from the style. So here you're using H1 for a first level heading, and you see that this kind of disentangles it. Anyway. This looks exactly as you might expect it to look, not very good, but it works. So that would be like your first thing. You can put it up somewhere, and then this just works. So you can do this with GitHub, by the way. GitHub allows you to host directly some HTML files, and then you would be done. It's a little bit of a hassle updating this, right? But there's editors for that. Sublime Text, for instance, maybe no one used that anymore. I think everyone uses VS Code now, right? Probably like maybe a show of hands. Anyone still using Sublime? used to be cool, like in my day, no, earlier in my days used to be like Emacs and Vim and so on, okay. And now it's VS Code. Anyway, but you can use anything for that, even Notepad in Windows, right? I wrote my first website with Notepad and it looks exactly the way you would expect it to look as if it was written in Notepad. All right, so yeah, blah, 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 it looks a little bit crappy. You can make it a little bit nicer. There's all kinds of websites for this around, and some of them have profanities in the name. So in the interest of recording this, right, I'm not going to repeat those, but I can show you the links later on. So you can add some additional style information to make this nicer. And of course, again, for those of you who have done this before, I know that you can include these style sheets again, but I wanted to show that you can also put them there inline. There's some style information where you say you want to have a margin, you want to have a little bit of a line height and some other font size and maybe some background color and so on and so forth. And when you do this again, then it looks a little bit nicer. I can show you the difference in right now, actually, after the presentation. It's not a lot nicer, but it looks a little bit nicer. And this just tells you that with just like 5 or 6 additional lines, you can style your content a little bit and you can make it yours and you can experiment. And I think that's actually pretty cool. When I started, I was like playing around with these sort of things all day long and figuring out how to make it look nicer and so on. Yeah, one thing that I want to say is like, this is very much a grow as you learn experience, right? It's the same with learning any skill, but for some reason people are a little bit more afraid of this, probably because it seems like it's public, and yeah, can definitely be the case. There are some nice books about this. You can read these Head First HTML books. In any case, I'm not getting referrals from them, but there is this whole series of stuff from O'Reilly, which is called Head First something. So like Python, HTML, R. I'm not sure whether they have TensorFlow. You probably don't want to learn TensorFlow, but PyTorch maybe, I'm not sure. So O'Reilly is a great publisher for these sort of things. They have good, lots of good technical documentation. If you're still the generation that reads a book, if not, then tutorials, right? The other cool thing that you can do is, maybe not on all websites, but you can get around that if you know how, to maybe, okay, if this is too patronizing, like, don't want to make new enemies here, but the cool thing is that when you visit a website, your browser actually gets sent the source code of that website. So basically, there's nothing from stopping you from like just looking at that. If you visit a website that is like, oh, this is super cool, and you want to copy something, then you can often see how they are doing it or how they are, what types of frameworks they're using, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
One thing that also really works well is ChatGPT.
That's true. Yeah. ChatGPT.
So you can say, I want a picture in a circle, and then it gives you.
Yeah. Very good point. Yeah, you should definitely, should also, for these type of things, make use of ChatGPT, right? I'm kind of a little bit of a bottom to top approach. So I like this when I understand like how are these things working in practice, and then I put them together. But if you really want to get results, I mean, use ChatGPT, right? And the important thing is like experiment, and that I didn't put on the slide, but it's like a little bit with a child's party, right? Like you should have some fun doing that. So it should feel like a fun thing, and it can actually be super rewarding when you figure out how to make stuff work, and it looks kind of nice, and people visit it and so on. And you have to remember, I mean, this is maybe, okay, this sounds weird, but I'm going to go there. So I still find it amazing that I mean, we're potentially trained in the wrong way or conditioned the wrong way. When we go on Twitter and I tweet something out and it's only 20 people or only 50 people that like it, then I'm like, oh no, this tweet totally failed. But isn't it still like kind of cool that you have like 50 people or 20 people that like see something about your article? Because I mean, previously I mean, not even my parents know when I publish a new article, right? And now suddenly you like have this whole megaphone that you can use, and it's the same with the website. So people will visit that. I mean, trust me. I mean, I can look at my stats, and people are looking at this. And there's even aggregators for websites. So if someone likes your content or likes a paper of yours, they can just submit it to some aggregator, like whatever, like Reddit or something. Even though Reddit also instituting some new API changes, so we are kind of living in interesting times where every corporation is changing the ways people are interacting with the content. And yeah, it's still it's still kind of fun. So you make it easy for people to find you. Yeah. One more or less last thing before I show you a very cringy picture from 2007, I think, is this is actually Markdown. So this is the only thing you need to remember to write something in Markdown and get it published. So you tell it with one of these hashtag symbols or pound symbols or whatever. You make a level 1 heading. With 2, you make a level 2 heading. With 3, you make a level 3, and so on. And that's about the thing that you need to remember to publish something with a Markdown based system, for instance. So it's doesn't get any easier than this. And now comes a little bit of the opinionated part. I guess everything I say is opinionated, but this is not really opinionated. So if you get to choose, I mean, we'll do this later on in practice, right? And I'll try to accommodate everyone. So if you want to do something with Google Sites or a content management system, I'm going to try to accommodate you. But I really want to stress that Markdown, or in general, these free text formats, they have some advantages because they're pretty great for note taking. So you can use them for other things as well. So like you learn it once, you use it twice. That's amazing, right? 50% safe. They are also highly versatile in other ways. So you will encounter them in other forms and other contexts as well. But the most important thing, and I think this really cannot be stressed enough, it's a plain text file. So like HTML as well, it ensures compatibility for long-term storage in some sense. Because what you don't want to do is like, I mean, I'm lazy in that sense. Like, okay, if my employer listens to this, then I don't mean lazy in the scientific sense, but like I don't want to spend time on tasks that I don't like to do, like admin. And so what you can do is like if you write your stuff in Markdown and a couple of years down the road, your content management system or whatever you use, they decide, oh no, we're not going to work anymore, we're defunct now. Then you just change it to another system and you can still render the same content. So you don't have to think about where's my content gone, or to put it in different terms, like suppose you are an extra university research center and you get hacked. And now what do you do, right? I mean, all your databases are gone, and so all your content is also gone, so that's bad. But if you had taken backups, maybe with Git or with something else, and if it was all plain text, then you could like just like ported that to somewhere else. So like the point being that you pay a price later on for using a flashy system that doesn't give you access to its insights. And it's not bad to do so. I want to stress that, but I just want to kind of give you how do I say this correctly? I want you to be informed about this. So if you take loving care of your website in Google Sites and you put everything there and you're like, oh, this looks so cool and so on, it's lovingly crafted. And then a couple of years later, Google is like, yeah, you're going to pay me $100 per month now to do this, right? Then you're kind of screwed because you can't get you have to take your content away from there then again. Whereas if you put everything in plain text files and you just make sure that they are rendered differently, they're like being presented to the world differently, then you can always take your content with you. Probably not a big thing if you only have like one page that you want to show to the world, but if you start like writing or something like this or adding your papers there, then it might be problematic. With this, I want to show you some cringy stuff from like 2006. It's not the first time that I started blogging, but like, yeah, about like probably a little bit earlier, right? And I still have those posts. You can look them up on our website. They still exist. Because I always used like this free text stuff and I always put them there. I mean, of course, the question is like, is it really worthwhile doing this and preserving those? And I would say, of course, because I mean, they're written by me. So I mean, they need to be shared with the world because it's just amazing. But fundamentally speaking, it was just easy to do so, right? It was just free text stuff and I could put them there. And I also like to, sometimes when I feel very arrogant, I sometimes look back to this and this like gets me down again. And I'm like, okay, like I used to be like a pretty big idiot at this point. And now I'm an idiot in other ways. That's good. But you live and learn. And yeah, that's kind of neat to do, in particular when you consider it from the academic perspective. So don't do maybe what I did there, like, right, I mean, enemies like a craftsman, but that's okay. But if you do it in an academic sense, it can really pay off, because if you write something about your, I don't know, like an elbow or like a VAE or something like this, and maybe you want to read this in like a couple of years again. So do that. That's really nice. Now, some even more opinions, but I'm using big O here because these are big O opinions. So if all of this seems overwhelming, then let me tell you that anything like is better than really nothing. So it doesn't have to be like super well crafted and stuff like this. I mean, take a look at some other websites. I mean, not all the content that you will find looks really great. I mean, the best mathematics professors, for instance, they have websites that look like they just coded them up in Notepad, and probably they did. That doesn't matter. I mean, they exist on the internet. You can look up their stuff. You can look up their papers. That's great. So anything is better than nothing. Give us, like us being the conference organizers or the PIs or whatever, give us some contact details, anything you feel comfortable in sharing, like a professional email address maybe, right? Doesn't have to be your private one. Yeah, whatever. So when you start building this though, then always remember that less is also more. So don't get overwhelmed. So you don't have to construct a castle in the first stage, right? I mean, if you, there's a great trick that you can use if you like some personal website that has been around for some time. Try the Wayback Machine or the Internet Archive. They often give you a way to like go back in time because they index those websites at different points in time. And then you can literally take a look at how the stuff was being created. And most of the time, it really doesn't look that great. There's super nice screenshots around from, I think, the first, I think, was it Amazon or something like that? I think like all the big websites that you now see that are lovingly crafted, when they started out, they didn't have perfect design, and that's okay. I mean, no one forces you to be that, right? Also, don't underestimate this. This comes back to the idea of like, how are you ranking at Google or some other search engine? In my experience, if you build it, they will come. So I mean, it's clear. I mean, you won't be the #1 ranked website maybe for academia in Germany. That's gonna be hard to top. Then you have to do some clickbait articles, which I would suggest you don't do. But I mean, people are going to visit that stuff. And even if your community, if your sub-community, even if it's like only 20 or 30 people, I mean, people are going to visit that and they're going to look at this a little bit. The other thing that I already mentioned is, but just like to reiterate this, Google Sites is indeed a good start. But make sure that you're aware of the fact that you might be logged into them for some time. So you can use this to try out something. The good thing is also you can combine things, right? You can get started with Google Sites, and then you take some time, maybe during a vacation or something, and you're like, oh yeah, I always wanted to learn HTML on vacation, because who doesn't, right? And then you just start crafting your website there, and then you just switch over at some point. And the last point, this is kind of on this slide. The last point on this slide, which is kind of locked into the previous one, is do get a domain. Not only because I might earn money from this, or we both will, but also because that makes it super easy to change the kind of pointer to your website. So you can couple your domain with Google Sites, I think, and then it just points there. You can also point it to somewhere else later on. So if you kind of changed, you can use the domain as kind of an alias for how people should find your stuff. And I can tell you this because I mean, my domains have been with me for a while now. I think the oldest one is from 2004, actually. I still have that. And of course, the hardware and the actual hosting and all that stuff, that changed a couple of times in between, but the domain was always stable. So people could always reach me under that. So that's something that I can really recommend. But again, if you're overwhelmed with this, anything is better than nothing, and less is anyway more, right? So just start slow and see what happens, see if you like it. There's two things that I want to throw out there. I mean, I don't know how corporate we have to do this now, but these are just my personal experiences here. So I've been using DigitalOcean for a while now. They offer you web servers if you want that. That's kind of the hardcore option, basically, because you're saying, okay, I'm going to run my whole web server and what they call a virtual machine or a root server or whatever. You can have those. It's pretty cool. By the way, if you have those skills and you know how to work with a Linux machine, this can also be sometimes helpful in other ways. So I also use DigitalOcean to have a secure temporary storage when my collaborators want to send me data, because our IT doesn't make this possible for some reason. And so I go to DigitalOcean, I say, I want a 1 terabyte hard drive. You rent it by the hour, or rather by the minute, so you pay only for the time that you use it. Then I put it in a new server there that is only created for the purpose of transferring the data. I set up a user account for my collaborators with SSH and everything, so like super duper secure, blah, blah, blah. They put the data there. I go on the server with my own SSH user account, and I just put it somewhere where I want it to be, and then I delete the server, and I only pay like, I think $5 or something for the whole endeavor. It saves me tons of time and tons of headaches and tons of emails to write, because I can basically just tell people, okay, this is where you point the stuff. So this is why DigitalOcean, really great. The other thing, and this is actually where you can get a referral code. Oh man, this is going to be such an advertisement. Like I know the reviews already. Like tomorrow, like in the newspapers, like PI suggests people to buy stuff. So I'm using Dynadot for the domains. Yeah, honestly, if you don't want to use that one, but another one, there's like in Germany, there's Domains 24 or Domain Discount 24, Domain Discount 24. Yeah, I mean, I think all of them are pretty much equal at this point. So take a look at the domains that they offer. Not all of them offer all the top level domains. So some of the special top level domains you only get by some registrars. You can talk about this later or offline. Dynadot so far has been pretty great. I've been using that for like 6 years now. I was previously Domain Discount 24. Didn't like the responsiveness of the Domain Discount support actually. So I mean, it was okay in terms of pricing, but when I needed something, they always took some time to answer, and I'm like, nah, don't want that. But yeah, but it really doesn't matter. You can pick anything. I think even GitHub now has a kind of domain buying scheme or something like this, or Google or something like this. So whatever you feel comfortable with, wherever you wanna buy your stuff. They all have the same same capabilities. The only thing that might differ, as I said, is the price and the top level domains that you can get. Speaking of top level domains, the AI one, some of you might like, is probably super expensive for all of you. Like I don't have one. There used to be a .ml one, which is actually the top level domain code for Mali. I liked it for .machine learning, but the thing is, this is actually one of the registrars that you shouldn't use, so don't use Freenom. I didn't put it there because I wanted to be pedagogical, because I know that if I put something there, then people are going to be, oh yeah. So Freenom is out. Don't use that. I'm not kidding you. They do a scam with people. So they give you the domain for free for 1 year, and then afterwards they like charge you, like they say like, oh, sorry, we have like some breach there. Like, yeah, pay us $100 so you get the domain back. Otherwise, we're going to delete it. So that happened to some of my colleagues. So don't do that. Or use a different top level domain. Yeah.
What's the reasonable price?
Oh yeah, good question. Reasonable price for domain. So I would say around like $10 per year. That's, I think, a reasonable price for a domain. I wouldn't go, unless you're like really in love with the domain, or unless you maybe have a very special name that doesn't exist in other domains anymore. I wouldn't go much higher than $10 per year. So anyone that wants to charge you higher is I would say, scamming you. And I think most of the domains, so .net, .com, and so on, you get them for like below 10 typically per year, not per month. I want to stress that, per year. Yeah, and then oftentimes if you really are in love with the domain, you can oftentimes get some discount for when you register it for some time in advance. That can also be pretty good, by the way, to counter inflation and other prices. I mean, for $10, it really doesn't matter that much, right? But if you already know, okay, I'm going to use that for the next 5 years, and then they say, okay, you just pay $40 instead of 50, right? That's great, because then you have the contract, it's longer. And then if they raise the price the year after, you're like, ha 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 ha, I don't have to pay this. But yeah, it doesn't really matter. About other top level domains, okay, I should go on record saying this. There is no discrimination in terms of the top level domains that you will see, except for one country at the moment, which you can probably guess, and that's .ru. So don't do that. .ru domains might be problematic. I actually had one because my dad is an interpreter for Russian, so it was kind of a good idea to have this as a business domain, but we've since stopped doing business after the Ukraine invasion. We of course stopped doing business with them, and then we got rid of that domain. It also didn't help that they charge a lot of money anyway. So yeah, but other than that, like, you can pick any top level domain that you want, and it typically won't be detrimental in terms of ranking or in terms of people able to find you. Maybe I just remember another one. Some bozo had the great idea of doing a new domain name that is actually called .zip, ZIP. That's probably a bad idea to use that, because it could very well be the case that search engines won't be able to distinguish between a file name and your domain. So, okay, that's like super academic. Okay, that's it. Yeah, sorry, we have a question.
What's the point of the domain? Is only just really a name? I mean, like if you have .com or .de, like, is there any difference in ordering on your website?
No, typically not. That's what I meant. There's no discrimination there. I mean, typically some registrars might have special domain country-specific things. So, for instance, you might have to have a residence there or some business interest there to register one. So I know that for I think for EU, for instance, .eu, I think you have to prove that you live in some European country. They typically do this proof by saying you need to have a credit card with a European bank or an address in some European country, whatever. But yeah, it really doesn't matter that much. So the only thing I would refrain from .ru and maybe .zip, because yeah, it's a little bit weird. And also, okay, and I have to say, like, that's personal preference. I don't think .ai is really worth the price. Likewise, .io, you often find this, but I think .io can be upwards of a couple of $1,000 nowadays. So I'm thinking like it really doesn't matter. And I personally, I mean, whenever I visit a website, I mean, I don't care what the extension is. So unless you're dealing with very stuck up people, they won't complain whether it's like, I don't know, some people have .space. I mean, one of my collaborators is working with diffusion models, and so he has diffusion.space. So like, it's kind of neat, and it's like it rolls off the tongue. So that's the thing. You can also pick, by the way, you're not restricted to a name, of course, right? And you can make up anything that you want. I have to admit, if you were to ask my advice, which I'm guessing you are since you're sitting here, sorry about that, I would probably use something like a last name or first name, last name, or something like this, because then it's kind of, yeah, kind of like a little bit professional. So yeah, but other than that, I don't think it's a big thing.
If you use GitHub, then you will just have it.
For GitHub. We'll talk about this in the practical part, but for GitHub, you can also couple that with the domain. So GitHub, what GitHub does is typically, and I'm very professionally found there as pseudo manifold. We can do this together later on, because I haven't actually done the GitHub stuff before, because I run my own stuff. So I figured like, hey, it would be cool if someone wants to use the GitHub. We can do it live with my account. We can see what happens, and no one will be hurt in the process. So GitHub gives you automatically, if your username is Homer Simpson, then you get homersimpson.github.io for free. And this, again, for free, this doesn't cost you anything. I think this is cool, but my username is also cool. It's pseudo manifold. So you can do this. You can start with this. Doesn't cost you anything. And then if you later want a domain and you figure like, okay, now I want like homersimpson.com or something, then you can still point it there. So GitHub supports that. So there's like transparently pointing to that record. I'm not sure whether I'm making any sense here, but basically you're not doing any changes that are irreversible. So like everything can be adjusted later on. You're not locking yourself in the box there. Okay, cool. Then the practical part, yeah, just the usual links, so where you can reach me, blah, blah, blah. One thing that I want to mention that it didn't come up here, but just in terms of like making it easier to start and so on and so forth. Whatever you do, I wouldn't necessarily set up something like WordPress with comments. So do yourself a favor, don't set up comments, don't enable comments on your website. I strongly believe that this is not necessary because if someone wants to write you, I mean, you have an email address or some other means of communicating with you on your website, that's perfectly sufficient. If I want to write you an email, I certainly going to use that one, and I'm not going to comment on your content there. And so at least in Germany, that's a German thing now, I have to say, or a European law, I don't know, certainly German law. You just get into trouble if you don't moderate your contents and stuff like that, if you don't moderate your comments and stuff like this, because someone could post something like, this person is bad, and then someone finds it and you get like a letter from a lawyer and so on if you don't delete it sufficiently fast. So when I did my website, I never had public comments there. It has served me well so far. And I'm very glad that people still write to me. So people still, if they really like my content, I get a couple of emails every month where someone is like, oh yeah, I read this article and it was really great. And they just find my email address on the website. So it really works. And I think I can say that I'm I don't miss getting the random people and commenting on my stuff. So yeah, which also, yeah, this is one thing that we didn't cover here. This is not about social media in general, but website is also cool because in some sense it's passive. So you don't have to actively push this on people and have to interact with people and say, oh, look at my cool website, look at my cool website, right? So it's a little bit like what I like about this type of interaction is that you're not pushing it on anyone. You don't have to be active or vocal on Twitter or Instagram or on other kind of platforms and constantly say, oh, this is so amazing, whatever. But you just have this thing that defines your work and so on, and you have a way to have a business card essentially. All right. Any questions about this now?
Any questions online?
Yeah.
I think that's worth a comment. The link in your email address in the website.
Oh, yeah.
right?
Oh yeah, okay, I didn't mention this. The cool thing is when you buy a domain, you also buy like everything in front of the domain. So yeah, that's a very good point. So I have like, I kind of like this one. So like I can do like my first name dot my last name dot me, but still like this is the domain that I bought. And I create like a subdomain as it's called for the other stuff. So yeah, that's you can also do this. It's kind of fun. I have more of those if you if you can discover all of them. You can do some funny things with those. Hope this is yeah, it worked out. Okay. Great. Oh yeah, one thing we didn't discuss, but we're going to see that. So if you have, there's a difference between this S and this and without the S, right? So you if you have a domain, then at some point you also probably want a security certificate for that. That's a little bit more advanced, but in the spirit of saying, let's start easy, right? We're just gonna ignore that for now. But it can also be done. It's not a biggie. It's just a little bit annoying. It has become better these past years, but it used to be a little bit more annoying.
Do you have slides for the project?
No. I wanted to do it like a little bit free form. So I had the idea basically that everyone would like maybe pick out one provider, like ask again like what they want to do, and then we just like either they start working on that, or I can, for instance, I would show how to do it for GitHub, because I think that's, I mean, if you're technically inclined and if you like this GitHub stuff, then I think GitHub is the easiest thing to do it right now. That doesn't lock you in, because you can just, you have a repository that you can clone and where your content is being stored. Otherwise, I can also show it how to do it for Google Sites. That actually only takes 5 seconds. So can start like this.
Okay, yeah, that seems.
Yeah.
Then should we have a 5-minute break?
Yes.
There's also pizza
Yeah.
and cake.
Oh, wow.
Where's the pizza? Huh? Yes. Yeah, pizza.
There's pizza. Amazing.
So,
Oh, yeah, and the
people,
chocolate.
if you're on campus, you can still come for a talk. So we'll have a 5-minute break and then
Yeah.
we'll start with the tutorial.
Great. Yeah, I'm going to stop here the sharing. Okay, but anyway, so we went to sites.google.com and we just put this there, and you can select a theme, and then you can add stuff there. And so I mean, if you've worked with Microsoft Word or some other kind of editor, then I mean this is exactly what you can do. So basically, you just fill out a couple of things. You add the content that you want to show there, and that's basically it. Then you publish it. Google also permits you to add your domain to that, but I think that's not something we should try to do right now, because that might be a little bit complicated to have at this point. But yeah, it's also possible, and then you can click around with this. You get even some simple version control, and you can put your things there at your email address. Two things actually that are generally maybe of importance. The first one is about, should you put your email address there, or should you use like this weird, like, should you spell it out, or should you put it like in a weird fashion, like at or whatever, and spell that out? Honestly, I would say it really doesn't matter anymore. I think we have lost the war to the spammers anyway, so I just put it there normally. I don't care. I mean, I think, so my email provider is actually pretty good at filtering out unwanted emails. So I have literally all my email addresses were online at some point. I don't notice any uptick in spam. So actually I get more spam at my Helmholtz address that is not filtered than I get at my personal email address. And my personal email address is actually kind of a proxy for, I think, about 10 or 20 different email addresses that are being used like for, I don't know, shopping, or like some communities that I'm part of, and so on and so forth. So I wouldn't worry about that. And actually it even makes it easier. So maybe it's preaching time a little bit, but I do want to mention one thing that really irks me about our current website, which is why I think it's good to use a different provider. Accessibility is really a problem on the net. If you are disabled, if you have problems reading stuff, a lot of the standard websites don't work well anymore, because they are just overloaded with so much crap. Like I tested this today. If you want to use, like, okay, shamelessly, like, okay, this is no, Dan, don't give me the signal, but IEEE, which you might know as like the Institute of Electrical and Electronical Engineers or something like this, one of the largest technical organizations in the world. They have their own search engine for the papers that you put there, IEEE Explore. This thing takes almost 20 megabytes to give you a document, and then you haven't downloaded the PDF yet. And on top of that, it uses so much JavaScript that if you are a little bit like vision impaired, you have big trouble finding out what the actual content is. So yeah, that if you add your email address, this is now the point that I wanted to make. If you add it in a normal way so that people can click on it, you also make it easier for your disabled users or for people that are like that have some vision impairment or whatnot to interact with that. So it can pay off to do that. The other thing I want to mention, since we have this nice stock photo here, and this comes up time and time again, what am I actually allowed to put on my website in terms of photos? Do I have to fill out a form? Do I have to fill out consent forms and copyright forms for everything? The answer is a resounding no. You need to make, if it's stuff that you did, there's no problem putting it there. In particular, maybe like getting back to the idea of crushing the corporate overlords. I should have mentioned this in the beginning, but now, okay. Most of the publishers that you publish with, even the for-profit publishers, they have a clause in their bylaws, and you should read that, where they say you're not allowed to put that on an academic server, preprint server, but you're allowed to put it on your personal website. So this gives you also a nice way to make all your publications open access for free and in a legal way, because they leave that loophole open, because they say, well, if you host it yourself, then you're allowed to do that. So I'm doing this with glee, because I don't want to say, I don't want to pay $40 to read my own papers. But yeah, anyway, about the pictures, don't use anything that someone else created unless they tell you that it's okay to do so. In particular, if you use photos or elements, design elements from somewhere else, check the license briefly. It's not that hard. So there are certain licenses around there. Maybe this is time where I do the shameless plug for my own website. You can see that, for instance, I have this below here. So my content is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License. Doesn't matter, you can pick a different one, but Creative Commons, basically, if you click on that, and now it should work. Yes. Okay. This is not like one of those things where now everything crashes. So this license means that you are allowed to like share the stuff or like adapt it and so on and so forth, unless you attribute me. So unless you tell, so you have to tell, okay, this theme was originally created by Bastian, or this content was originally written by me, and so on. And that's actually pretty cool. Yeah, we have a question.
And if someone uses it and does not attribute it to you, what happens?
I mean, technically I could sue them, but I don't want it. So the thing is, as like an academic, I like this idea of having a kind of attribution license, because our currency is often citations or like being mentioned, right? Like people telling like this was work created by. So I'm okay with this. You can also use a Creative Commons 0 license, which basically means people can use it, no strings attached. All of these are fine. No questions asked. I actually never sued anyone for this. I just like the idea of putting it there for people that actually care about this, so that they say, hey, this was kind of nice. And so I put it there. I also have a couple of templates and stuff like this for PhD thesis there. And I also ask people in the licenses, I ask them, if you like this template and if you use it, please like acknowledge me somewhere and so on. Like I would say a fraction, maybe like 5% of the people or 1% of the people actually do that, but that's okay. I mean, it's like, I'm not, I don't want to sue people for that. But yeah, this is actually pretty easy to do. So make sure that if you use a picture that this is allowed. There are great services around for finding these things. So for instance, the Noun project, this is icons and photos for everything. They typically have like very much nice licensing available, using pictograms for stuff like this, and you just have to attribute the creator. Easiest thing to do is like to put that somewhere in your website as like an acknowledgement section. Now it gets a little bit weird for German law, but as academics, you are for once particularly protected by the law. Isn't that great? Because normally we are on the opposite end of that. But copyright law grants us special privileges with respect to using other things as long as we attribute creators. I'm not a lawyer, I should prefix this. But what this means is that if you, for instance, change something substantially, so if you take an icon from there and you update it, then this means that under German copyright law, Urheberrecht, you are allowed to still use that on the website. But before you all now do these sort of things, like maybe ask first, and if you're like really unsure, ask a lawyer. But like I can tell you that like maybe it was good to establish my cringe website from 2007, because that means that I have some like credibility now. So I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. I never once received a complaint from anywhere. Like really no lawyers, no nothing. Of course, I also made sure that I use only the content that I created somehow. But yeah, that's really no problem. Okay, let's destroy that site again. Let's maybe go to GitHub now. If you already have I'm assuming you already have an account. Okay, that's good. So if not, then you have to create one. I can show you this later, of course, but I just want to go ahead with this. So now let's see how I do this. So the thing you need to do is you create a new repository. You call this repository with your name. I think that's the idea, like this. And you make it public. And I didn't try this out at first, so I hope that this is gonna work now. Otherwise, it's gonna be annoying. But yeah, this is the repository that they create. So it's like your username.github.io, and you set it to public. I'm not sure. No, you actually don't need a template. Okay, you don't need a README file. You don't need anything. Maybe you want to pick a license. Okay, that's another. We're going on so many side tangents. It's like math class again. But here as well for code and HTML and Markdown and whatnot that counts as code. If you want to make your life easier, and especially if you want people to actually use or interact with the stuff, you can also pick a nice license here that enables that. If you don't use a license, I mean, okay, these are all technicalities, right? I mean, nothing happens. I know that most people on GitHub don't pick a license for their code, even for their academic code. Actually, that's pretty bad from a technical point and legal point of view, because that means that a corporation is not going to touch your code even with a big stick, which is bad sometimes when you create something for them, because having no license there means that it falls under copyright, and copyright means that no one is allowed to do anything with that unless they ask specifically for that. In particular, you're not even allowed to look at the stuff and use it as baselines or stuff like that. Very technically, I know no one's going to care, but like there are lawyers and who knows. So if you put your code on there, like in general, not even your website, but also for academic code, now making some new friends here, use an open source license. Now comes the part where I'm making enemies. Don't use the GPL, don't use the GNU one. That's bad. I'm telling you why. It's bad because it forces everyone who works with your code or who modifies your code to make that code also open. That sounds weird, maybe coming from me, but there's a good reason for that. This is not about your website. This is also about your general life and what you do with your research code. If you have a company that uses your code and they build something on that, maybe you build something as part of an internship, or I mean, then you have legal agreements. That's not a big problem. But if you build something nice that a company wants to use later on, they're not going to touch GNU GPL code, because they know that they will then have to like open source their whole code base essentially. So that's kind of leaving their competitive advantage. I'm probably, like I gave the impression that I'm very, very anti-corporate and so on, but I do believe that corporations are of course entitled to their own trade secrets, and with the GPL you basically force them to make them open. So if you have the time, pick a different one, because you get the credibility anyway, and or the credit. And moreover, it will make your life easier, because if you, after finishing your PhD or postdoc or whatever you're doing, if you're saying, hey, I actually like the code that I wrote here, I'm going to spin that off into like my own company, then with the GPL, you're completely screwed. You can't, I mean, well, you have to make everything open then. I mean, you can still use it, but you have to do it in the open. Whereas with a BSD license, for instance, or an MIT license, those guys here, you can use your code in a commercial setting as well, and you can make money off of that. There's actually, if you don't believe me, look up Leo Pachter's blog. You all know Leo Pachter, I think. Okay, he's very opinionated. And this is one of his 2 blog posts, like in his whole career, where he acknowledges that he was wrong. And he acknowledges that he was wrong about picking the GPL license because it made his life harder. There's a blog post where he says, I was wrong about the GPL license or something like this. And he actually says that the BSD license is kind of good for his purposes. So do that as well. Maybe I'm going to do it here, like in being an example for the people, right? I think most of my code is now under some form of GPL or MIT license. The exact details between those, they don't matter. Like lawyers can tell you more about this, but BSD essentially, or MIT, the way I understand it, means that you can use my stuff, but if you use it, make sure to acknowledge me. But if you use it, make sure that you don't advertise with my name unless you ask me first. And this actually gives you a way to sue if someone now creates a product and says that this has been endorsed by Helmholtz or by Bastian or by whomever. Then you can actually say, no, it hasn't, because I never received the request, and you can sue them to hell. Never happened to me because all the stuff I'm doing is useless, but yeah, that's that. Yeah.
What's the difference between MIT and BSD?
Yeah, now you got me. So I don't know by heart. So I think we might look at the license file, but I think the one from BSD is actually kind of easy to parse. It's like just the three things, like redistribution of source code, must retain the above copyright notice. That's kind of nice. So they see like that this is you, right? Binary form as well, and here neither the name of the copyright holder nor the names of the contributors may be used to endorse or promote products derived from the software without specific prior written permission. Kind of nice. Again, it doesn't happen to me because all I do is useless, but it can happen to you. And I think for MIT there might be, I think this clause might have actually not be in there, the third one. I need to check that. But I like this idea of like being this, I dream of a world where everyone uses my awesome topology code and where like the world is safe by topological data analysis and so on. And then they should not be allowed to like advertise with me without at least paying for a group dinner or something like this, right? We don't ask for much. Good. Now we have this, repository here. Let's clone it. Yeah.
Public?
Yeah, it has to be public actually for it to work. All right, now we have cloned it. Now we open our favorite editor and we just create an index file. This can either be this should work if I do it in Markdown, but I'm not so sure. So I'm going to do it in Markdown.md. The file extension is .md. The file name should be index. And then you just add something there in Markdown. I don't know, my projects, contact, I have no clue. I don't actually know how this is going to look now, but you can type anything there that you want. I'm going to commit this, like first content, and I'm going to push it. For you, this might look a little bit differently because potentially you're using another editor. And now we wait, and I hope. So wait, of course I'll help you out if this doesn't work. But now technically it should be reachable under that URL. Now the moment of truth. So let's see. I'm reloading the repository because you can now see like this funny little icon here, which tells you whether the website is being built or not. And some checks haven't completed yet. Maybe we can see what happens. So GitHub is really nice and gives you like a whole infrastructure to build these pages yourselves and so on and so forth. There's tons of additional documentation around there. The whole thing that we're using is called GitHub Pages. So by just toggling that into their search engine, you can take a look at what other things you can do. You can create your own style sheets. You can create your own templates for using that. There are also a couple of predefined ones. Okay, this is taking longer than I anticipated. So yeah, now it finished building. And now we can see whether we can actually visit that. And that's it. So from this simple project, you got this type of website. I admit it's not the most beautiful one, but I think it's marginally more beautiful than not having one. And actually, what I really like about this plain template is that it already doesn't use the full width. So basically, when you type something there, it's not an eyesore and starts having like these very, very long lines, but rather it already goes there.
Can you go?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So you created index, then
So
you pushed it, and then
yeah, I call it index.markdown.
yes.
.md. You can also do index.html if you want to do HTML. Then you push it, then you wait, And then there should, at some point, if you reload the site, there should be like this nice indicator icon here.
Yeah.
And then you can visit it.
This index is like the key file. We can't have a different name.
No, you can't have a different name. No, sorry. It needs to be called index. Sorry, I should have said that. That dates back from the old days of web servers where they have a special file that they're looking for. And yeah, that special file tends to be named index. And if that's part of your project root directory, then this is the thing that will be served. The cool thing is that this is using GitHub infrastructure. It doesn't cost us a penny. But if GitHub is at one point saying, yeah, you need to charge us, you just clone this repository and you put it somewhere else, and bam, free website, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Yeah, I think there's also a couple of other things that you can set up. Maybe we'll wait here briefly and see whether everyone's got that. Yeah.
In the Google sites and also the GitHub, we just offer only the static web pages.
Yes. Yeah.
Not the dynamic.
Yeah. So you don't. So most of these websites are what we would call static websites. So there's like not a lot of dynamic content there. You can embed, you can integrate images and so on, but it's not dynamic in the sense that you don't have a database behind it and so on. If you need those things, then you definitely need to pay for a web hoster. I don't think anyone offers that for free.
Did it say for you that I was building the website, or was it just...
It should actually do this automatically, but does the green check mark appear? Maybe I can also otherwise just do the rounds and check.
Did anyone get it?
I feel like a teacher now.
Well, I mean,
You have to reload.
I
Reload?
didn't reload it.
Okay, maybe it's not showing. Okay, weird. Is that your username though? No, it's not. It has to be a username. Sorry, it has to be exactly your username, but you can rename it in settings. It has to be a username. You can click on the big settings above. Sorry, here. Yeah, and then you can rename it.
Then I didn't.
So who else has some troubles? Yeah, well, very good. Okay, coming back.
Can you start with like a private repository and make it website and then open?
Unfortunately not. I mean, you can technically leave this private. The thing that will happen then, it won't build this thing here for you. But you can keep it private as long as you want, and then you put it on. Then you put it public.
Then you don't see what it looks like.
Yeah, you don't get a preview for this. Maybe you could cheat. You can run your own web server locally, but that's a little bit more complicated. Not sure whether this is going to help. But there's file browsers for Markdown files, so you can at least see what you have as the content.
And I think it will take a few days or perhaps up to a week until that thing is indexed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't come up with those search results.
Exactly. You can also kind of add this here. You can also in the pages file, in the pages settings, you can also add a couple of other things there. So like for instance, trying a different theme or deploy from a branch. Yeah, sorry, come back. Was there a question?
So
Yeah.
you can also hide the source code as well for our web pages, like some code obfuscator. You just paste that and they turn the code into the fun.
Guess I'm not sure whether you could do this in GitHub. I have to admit, I don't see the reason why you would want to do this, because I mean, it's also a nice way to share some things with the community. I mean, it's not a trade secret, right? I mean, you're literally putting your content there so people can see it anyway. But I haven't actually checked whether you can do a code obfuscator, to be honest. Oh, interesting. With GitHub Enterprise, you can actually do it and hide your stuff. I didn't know that. So no endorsement for that. Probably costs a lot of money. Yeah.
Can I change my name or name my website?
Yes, but then you have to change your GitHub username. So this is a little bit of the disadvantage of that. But what you can do is this is why I'm adding why I went into the settings of my pages. You could add a different domain there, so people can still find them. By the way, this is also something that you can do for your organizations. So if you want an organizational website or something like this, this also works. And I should maybe add this. There is an even easier way to get, if you only want a couple of things to be shown for your people that visit your GitHub profile, you can add a README repository that will also be shown directly. I can show this to you in, let's see whether this works.
Will it always have this weird header?
Yes, but you can deactivate that.
Okay.
So shameless self-plug of our lab. There is a README. You can have a specific like README file or README directory that then gets automatically shown as like a website here. Same goes. Some people are doing this for their own GitHub portfolio. Yeah, it also works. You need to just search for GitHub and README repository. Then you also get this. But I like the idea of having this, having your own website a little bit more. And yeah, you can change the look and feel by adding some kind of themes. The stuff that is building this sort of pages is called Jekyll. That's a static site generator. It's a template engine that is kind of nice. We can try this out. I think there's a couple of ways to accomplish that. So you can kind of pick a theme and then put it there, and then you can also get rid of this header here. So like basically this guy here, this then is then away. But yeah, that's that. I think that's kind of the easiest way to get one of those, and then you only need to get people to link to it and have some fun with the markdown stuff. Yeah, guess that's about that's about it. I mean, the rest is up to you. I mean, try out a couple of things. Yeah, play around with themes and so on.
So if I bought a domain, I could add it in the custom domain.
Yes.
And then it would show this website that we're building.
Yeah. So it's like
Nice.
you can see how this works. So like you can see add custom domains, and essentially they explain everything very nicely, and you basically just need to need to point a domain there. We could try pointing one of mine there, but it might take some time for it to transfer. So I'm not sure whether it will work. It might take like half an hour to really work. But yeah. And as for the domain registration, I mean, this is like Dynadot. It's your friend here. Or anything else really, right? I mean, it's just that they have some nice pricing. Now you can see all my domains, or at least the ones that I have over Dynadot. So let's maybe take a look what we can find. Does anyone want to buy Helmholtz? Yeah, Helmholtz.ai. Yeah, that's true. That's actually nice. It's just like you can see that if you go for a .lol, it's gonna be a little bit shorter. But yeah, also like when you buy something like this, you want to check probably like what the renewal prices are, because oftentimes the first year is kind of cheap, but then it gets like weird. So for instance, like this is like kind of weird, right? Like the renewal is already, yeah, .inc is like $2,500. Yeah, so I'm not sure whether I can recommend this. I don't think you can get AI domains with Dynadot. So for me, that's not a big issue, but we can see whether this works.
Renewal is then the price for the next year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is why .com is kind of always the easiest. So can you replay this like charades? Can you give me like a keyword that we're pretty sure is not registered? Like it's sometimes very hard to find something like this, but maybe like cool and awesome workshop. Yeah, I just want to see what it does now. Wow. I think we broke the internet. Time to go home. Okay, no, that's okay. That exists. It's yeah. Maybe we should do .ai, because I really want to know how much they charge for that. Apparently, you can register it there as well. Oh yeah, look at this. It's not as expensive as I thought it would be. Maybe if I take something shorter, then it's probably going to be. Yeah. So I can tell you, like, if you find that one and give it to me at some point, I would be very much in your debt. But I tried to get, as a mathematician, I tried to get Hausdorff space and Hilbert.space, but someone already took them. And I'm like, it's really annoying, because yeah, you can see I did this before. Like every day I'm going there, every day. And so if you really want this, you can make them an offer, and somehow there's like a process for that. This I have to say is I never did that because it seems weird and I don't want to pay 250 bucks just to make an offer. And then maybe someone comes back to me and is like, yeah, I want 5,000 bucks for the domain. And I'm like saying, no, I mean, it's like 5,000 bucks is my, no, 250 for the offer, I think. And then they can set a price. So like if you make an offer, oh no, actually the minimum is 183 bucks that you have to offer. So I'm like, yeah, no.
But you pay 20 for just offering.
Yeah, so just for making the offer service, like just 20. So I'm like, I don't know about you, but is it worth it? Or should we buy Hausdorff space together? No, just kidding. Yeah. It's probably not as funny as I think it is, right? But yeah. Oh, good question.
Probably already taken, right?
Good question. Oh.
I would take them before I would take Hausdorff space, right?
Sorry?
I would take vector space before.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, oftentimes, I mean, I'm not gonna go on those websites now from the Helmholtz because who knows what is on there, right? But maybe I'll do that later, or we look at the who is information, because sometimes you can see who actually registered that. So in this case, it's some person. I don't know them, but probably like, yeah. I mean, some people are doing this for fun, so it's called domain squatting. Because for every service that you offer to humanity, you find some assholes, just record it, bad people who exploit that. And so you have domain squatting as well. So people are using like buying all the domains in bulk, like all the dictionary words and so on, which is why it's so great that you have like additional top level domains. But yeah, anyway, this shouldn't be like an advertisement.
Metric space.
What, really? Are you kidding me? Metric space is available. What?
Oh, it's expensive.
But available.
Ah, okay, okay, well, yeah, okay, well, no, let's say, yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, right? I mean, it's just like, how much was this Inflationsausgleich money that they paid us? But like, no. That's yeah, they're actually discussing how to pay all of you, right? But yeah, no, just pick a normal one, right? Like .com, .net, .org. Yeah, I think we have a couple of those for some of our research projects, and it's actually okay.
But why can't I pick something new?
Like a new, you mean a new ending, like a new top level domain? Yeah, that's because it's controlled by the USA. So there's like one international registry, the ICANN. I mean, the internet rolls out of that anyway, right? Like out of the US, ARPANET and so on. And ICANN is the international consortium for registering and making those domains available. And you have to bring this up with them and basically say, no, I want to have like a domain ending, like, I don't know, .helmholtz or something like this. And then they vote on it. They always institute new things. So like, ICANN has added quite a few new domains, like this XYZ is new, .games, .pro, .live. There's like actually a super long list of things, but it always takes them some time to actually do so. They were discussing a couple of years back, they were discussing to put .lab on there, and I'm waiting for that decision to happen, because then I'm like the first one to buy like everything. Like, and then because yeah, IDOS.lab sounds cooler than IDOS.group, but yeah. Oh yeah, but group is also one of the new ones. That's true. That's the unfortunate side effect. This is one of the things where you can't escape the lock-in because all the systems have to talk to each other, right? And so you can't make it up. Fun thing though, not sure whether this is going to happen this week or a couple of months, but there's a new service that is supposed to like kill Twitter. It's called Blue Sky, and there they want to use like this domain name system as well to have like a handle for you that cannot be taken away. So they're saying you participate with your domain name essentially instead of participating with a direct username. That's going to be, if they make it work, it's going to be kind of fun. Let's see whether this changes anything. Yeah, technically you can then use your domain to like interact with people. That used to be a big thing, by the way, anyway. So I can't show you this because that is actually really confidential, but you can add additional information into a domain. So basically, this domain is just, how can I say this? This is like a big phone directory, right? But you can ask for other attributes as well. So for instance, when someone writes me an email at my lastname.me address, they can also ask what is the mail server for that domain, right? Or they can ask what is an instant messenger server for this domain. And this used to be very cool a couple of years back because you could put all kinds of interesting information into domains. Now it's not as much done anymore, but it's really nice. So like this, you actually get a lot of more for your money than just the name, right? You get like a way to like add messages or subliminal stuff in there as well if you wanted to.
Something that I have done in the past was just to find out my favorite. Like then, for example, I was browsing someone's admin page. I saw that they have a very nice website. I just put on their repository that was essentially copy-pasted their files across and then changed the parts, like kind of the parts.
Yep, that's also a great idea. You can always clone a repository that you like. You can even, if you wanted to, you can even clone this one, which we used for, maybe I'm not sure whether I'm typing this correctly. This is something that I created for our workshop website, and you can clone this as well as like gtrl.github.io. And this gives you like a very simple way. I mean, you can already see what types of elements there are, right? So basically, you have some kind of pages that you can put there, and then some kind of header and blah blah blah. So yeah, feel free to clone that and use that as well. Funnily, this has become the standard template for some of the workshops because people cloned that because they liked it. They of course didn't read the attribution, and some of them were even like very nice because there was an author's file in there because some of my friends and I, we created this together, so we put this in an author's file, and they cloned this and they just removed the author's file and put their own authors in there, which I think is a little bit like, I mean, it's okay to not read the license, that's okay, but like, it's a little bit weird when you like replace people there and you like delete this. And then in particular, if you do this, make sure that you rebase your Git history so people don't find this, because otherwise it's going to be a little bit like weird when they say, we don't know how that happened. And you can see like GitHub commit, like deleted authors. I'm like, okay. It's so people do all these things. But I think they're doing this because they don't know how stuff is supposed to work, right? So yeah, but it's nice that you could share. Yeah.
Recommendations on whether we should use MD or HTML? I mean, like it's easier to start with, but I don't know how much you can customize it afterwards in terms of like styles.
Yeah, I think so. Markdown has the advantage that basically the customization is up to the engine that does that. Oh, I need some. Whoops! I think this is going to be a quick round. Does anyone have a USB-C cable? Because otherwise I'm going to go to sleep now. Sorry, the laptop will be. Whoa, that's like almost a catastrophe. Thank you. Catastrophe averted. So yeah, Markdown is just the format, and then you have a renderer that translates that into different formats, including HTML. So everything else is decided by that. With HTML, you kind of skip that process, right? But I have to admit that personally, after doing Markdown for thousands of years now, I just don't want to go back. So it's a simple format that you can use to translate to other modalities as well. Fun fact, not part of this course, but hey, you're going to learn something, right? Download this program here, Pandoc. It's a universal document converter, and learn Markdown. This is the hot shit. Like really, you can write something in Markdown. You don't have to think about Office or something else anymore. Just like one format, right? Like cleanse everything else. Like remove the toxicity of Microsoft Office from your brain, and then just convert Markdown to everything. It can even do Markdown to PDF, Markdown to docx, Markdown to HTML, of course. It also goes in other directions as well. Not all of them. So it's not universal, unfortunately, as even though they claim, but it doesn't work in the direction of PDF to text, for instance. That would be amazing, right? Get the text source code, but it does like Markdown to text and Markdown to PDF and Markdown to docx. That's really, really cool. I always use that when communicating with the admins here, because then I don't have to use their weird templates. And I can just type this in my own editor. But hence, like Markdown, I think is cool. HTML is nicer, though, if you want to learn kind of the underlying things, but almost no one writes HTML by hand anymore. It's just maybe good to understand a couple of things, because you can use HTML to programmatically generate stuff. So for instance, if you have a cool paper and you want to, I don't know, generate some papers, some figures from that, and you want to put them there automatically somewhere, you can write Python code that generates Markdown or HTML directly, and that's reasonably easy to do, and then you can directly include it. I use that to create another shameless plug, to create my research website here. So like all these publications. So this stuff here is all auto-generated from a big bibtec file, because I don't want to type that in by hand. I mean, yeah, okay, I'm giving myself the signal, but before the hack, we had a library service here, and they wanted you to fill this in automatically. And of course, I'm not going to do that because, yeah, no one wants to do that. But with a bibtec file, I can use, I can turn bibtec into Markdown and then just include the Markdown here. And I mean, you might not like it, but I think it's kind of nice. It gets the point across, and it even like does things like this, like putting the preprint here, a bibtec file that you can download. So all of this is like, yeah, I can send this to you. It's yeah, I'll send it to you. Just remind me later. I can show it to you. I just don't want to show it here because I'm really a little bit like anxious about the code quality, and like, you know, like then afterwards, like you have to promise me that you freeze the weights in your brain that contain my standing or my reputation, because afterwards it might go like super much down. But it does what it says on the can. It works reasonably well, and it even, I have to admit that Leon is here, so I can make some advertisements for its great preprint. It even supports annotations, because I believe, and that's another rant and or sermon here, I believe that people should be acknowledged. And so, for instance, Leon and Johanna are sharing the first authorship there, and you can put that stuff actually in your bibtec file, so that if you render it, even in your CV, that's my CV is generated from that as well, of course. People know it that like first authorship was shared and so on. And of course, like the bold font for me also goes in there, because when you apply somewhere, like, you know, like people are looking for the quality of your work and so on. No, of course they're not. Like, they're just counting the stuff. Like the more bold, the better. It's like in a paper. So yeah, make use of that. That's cool. That's actually not part of that course, but I think it demonstrates why Markdown is nice, because you can generate everything or anything to Markdown, and yeah, it's kind of neat. And GitHub support is for READMEs as well, so you can have a README.markdown, and then another shameless plug: use our code. So you can add, all of this is just a README file, right? Like README.md, and it even gives you like a nice table of contents, and you can put the stuff in there. You don't have to think too much, and it just looks okay, I think. So yeah, this is why I think Markdown is now the thing to use. I take all my notes in Markdown as well. It's kind of nice, and it still gives you some semantics, so you can pull out all the notes that have a certain date or whatever, right, and or a certain heading. Yeah, all of that is possible. If you're looking for a thing to do with Markdown, then use Obsidian. Probably that, obsidian.md. Haven't used it before because, I mean, I don't know. I'm living on the command line. I don't know how to use this fancy GUI stuff here, but I've heard good things about that. It's also like, it's note-taking. It's also free, I think. So yeah, Markdown, I think is good. HTML is nice if you want to generate some stuff in the backend. Enough rant. Good. So 2 hours filled. Thank you.